we're starting a new unit, so we're still going to be working with quadratics this unit, but we are focusing on solving quadratic equations this unit. So, today we are going to be looking at vertex form, and again, we're solving, which means our goal is to get x equals some number at the end of our problem. When we have vertex form, we use inverse operations to do that. So you should have already done these warm-ups. Let's just go through them real quick because they can kind of help us refresh so that we can do better when we solve these quadratics. Using inverse operations means that to get x alone, we do the opposite of what we see. So opposite of addition is subtraction. So we subtract on both sides to get x equals 9. This one is multiplication, that's what I see. So opposite of that is division, we divide on both sides to get x equals 2. Number 3, there's just a couple steps, that's all right. We do the thing that's farthest away from the x first. So that's going to be the 4. We have to get rid of it first. So we end up with 3x equals 9. Well, last step is to divide by 3 to get x equals 3 for our final solution. Okay, number 4, again, we're using inverse operations. So the inverse, or the opposite of squaring, is going to be square rooting. So when we have a square root and a square, those two cancel out. We get x equals, square root of 9 is 3. So what that's saying is that if we square 3, it's going to give us 9. There's actually a second answer that if we square it, it gives us 9. That answer is -3. So on number 4, we have two answers, +3 and -3. Both of those are answers. So as we use inverse operations to solve quadratics, it's going to look really similar to what we just did there, and we just have to figure out the right order to do it in. So for number 1, we have x squared minus 4 equals 0. If we want to get x equals for our final answer, we are going to go ahead and do the thing again that's farthest away from the x. So we cannot square root anything unless the x squared is all alone. So we need to get the 4 out of there. And now that the x squared is alone, we get to square root. So we get x equals 2. 2 is not the only thing that when squared gives us 4. -2 also gives us 4. So those are the two solutions we're looking at. All right, we'll go ahead and do number 2, and then we'll look at these graphs. So again, the square is on the outside of the parentheses this time. That means that this 4 is trapped until we get rid of the square. So the first thing that we have to do on this one is square root both sides, and we get x minus 4 equals square root of 0 is just going to give us 0. There's not a positive and a negative version of that answer like there was on number 2. So that's all we have. Lastly, we add 4 over and get x equals 4. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just graph these ones for us. And then I would like to examine the graph and the solutions of that graph, or of that quadratic. So, solutions of number 1 are at x equals 2, which is right here on this dotted line, and x equals -2. Okay, solutions of number 2 are x equals 4, which I'll draw a dotted line for that one as well. Well, if you look at these two, notice that those solutions are both happening on that x-axis. That is not a coincidence. So, solutions to quadratics are on the x-axis. In other words, the x-intercepts are the solutions. That is why on number 2, we just have one solution because we only have one x-intercept. But on number 1, we have 2 solutions because it crosses it twice. Okay? All right, so there's those two. If, again, the main idea of what we just did there is to get this x equals 2, x equals negative 2, and then x equals 4. That's the main idea, but it is important to know what's happening on those graphs as well. So let's go ahead and do these next two. And on number 3, so we have some more things happening there. Again, we can't square root until the thing that is squared is alone on the side of the equal sign. So we have to get rid of the 4 first. And we get x minus 1 squared equals 4. And now the next thing we need to do is square root because the 1 is trapped until the square root's gone. So we're going to get x minus 1 is what's left here because that square and square root cancel out. Square root of 4 is 2, but square root of 4 is also negative 2. So that splits into 2 different equations for us. And then our last step is to just add that 1 over and get x equals 3 and x equals negative 1. So those are our 2 solutions. If we were to graph that, we would see that those are crossing again at those solutions, 3 and negative 1. So our that worked out for us. Okay, number 4, we got even more happening there. So on this one, again, we cannot get rid of the square root until everything around it is on the other side. So our first step is going to be to add the 4 over because it's the farthest away. We're left with 2x minus 3 squared equals 4. And then, again, we can't square root until the 2 is gone, so we divide by 2 to get rid of the 2. We get x minus 3 squared equals 2. And finally, we can square root things. We're going to get, again, 2 equations. X minus 3 equals, if you put square root of 2 into your calculator, it's going to spit square root of 2 right back at you. So we could get a decimal from it, but we don't want to have decimal answers. We want to have exact answers. So exact ample answers for a radical is just going to be that radical is still going to be there, but we're still going to have 2 solutions. So when we square root both sides, we get a positive square root, and our second equation is going to be x minus 3 equals a negative square root of 2. So if you were to finish that off, you would add 3 to both sides. And this one, we usually put just the whole number, that integer in front. So 3 plus square root of 2. And then this one is going to be 3 minus square root of 2. And then if you were wanting to check your graph, you could go ahead and put that into your calculator and ask it to give you a decimal. And it would. But for our purposes, really that is the answer that we want. Sometimes what you'll see is that in this process of square rooting, instead of splitting it into 2 equations, we just say x minus 3 equals a plus or a minus square root of 2. So if you see a solution, or if you want to write your 2 solutions as 3 plus or minus square root of 2, that is acceptable, but you have to make sure you have the plus and the minus there so that I know that there's both of those solutions there, right? This is two solutions because you either have 3 plus or 3 minus, okay? So, we'll skip graphing that one, but if we were to graph it, it would hit at those points, and again, those decimals will be rounded, and it wouldn't hit at an exact spot, so we wouldn't be able to tell exactly where that one's at like the others, but those solutions are still going to be on that x-axis. Okay, so main job that you are doing here is getting these x equals for each problem. So we're going to practice doing that as partners. So I'm going to scroll down here. These are the problems that I want you guys to be working on as partners. So we'll do these 4, and then I'll show you those solutions. And then we'll do the next 4, and I'll show you those solutions. And then when you're done with those, you can work on that assignment. So go ahead and pause the video and work with your partner, 1 marker per person, and work together, not just taking turns to do these 4 problems. Okay, at this point, you should have already done these 4 problems, and now that the class is ready to move on, I will just do them real quick with you so you can make sure that you're doing them right. So this first one would have just been x squared equals 49 because we added that 49 over, and then we square root both sides to get x equals a positive 7 and x equals a negative 7. Those are your 2 answers. And again, if you were to write it like x equals plus or minus 7, that would be acceptable. Okay, this next one. So before we can get the 3 out of there, we have to square root both sides. So we get x minus 3 equals positive 7 or a negative 7. Okay, so it's acceptable to write your answer like that, but when you actually add that 3 over, we have 3 plus or minus 7. Well, you could simplify that to 2 different numbers. So I want you to actually write out the simplified. 3 plus 7 would give me 10. 3 minus 7 would give me negative 4. So my 2 answers are 10 and negative 4. Okay, so number 2, before we can square root, we have to get rid of the 9. So we add the 9 over and get x minus 6 squared equals 9. Then we can square root, and we'll get 2 equations out of that. We will get x minus 6 equals positive or negative 9. So when we add our 6 over, we'll have x equals 6 plus or minus 9. And then 6 plus 9 gives us 15. 6 minus 9 gives us negative 3. Okay, so, made a mistake on that one. This should be a 3 at this point because we did plus or minus 3. Square root of 9 is 3. My bad on that one. Glad I caught it. So that would change these for us. So 6 plus 3 is 9. 6 minus 3 is negative 3. Perfect. Okay. So number 6, last one. So we are going to need to minus the 4 over before we can get rid of our square. Then we square root both sides, and we'll end up with x plus 2 equals plus or minus 4 on this one. And when we minus the 2 from both sides, we will end up with x equals -2 plus or minus 4. Well, that's going to turn into our two answers. -2 plus 4 is going to give us a +2. -2 minus 4 is going to give us a -6. So our two answers are x equals 2 and x equals -6. Okay, now that we've gone over those four, you guys can go ahead and work on these last four problems with your partner. And then, again, we'll go over them again. So go ahead, pause the video right now so that you can work on those four problems, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, so you should have already done those with your partner on your tables, so we'll go ahead and finish them up. So first step on number 3 is to add 32 over. We get 2 times x plus 1 squared equals 32. Before we can square root, we have to get rid of the 2. So we get x plus 1 squared equals 16. When we square root both sides, we'll get x plus 1 equals a positive or a -4. Okay, well, we need to minus our 1 over, so we get x equals -1 plus or minus 4. So our two answers are going to be -1 plus 4. That will give us a 3. -1 minus 4, which will give us a -5. Okay, let's go ahead and do number 4. So we add our 6 over first. Then we have to divide by 3 before we can square root. At this point, we'll square root it and get x minus 4 equals plus or minus square root of 3, because square root of 3 doesn't simplify. So that would end up being x equals 4 plus or minus square root of 3. That answer is acceptable. If you wrote it as x equals 4 plus square root of 3 and x equals 4 minus square root of 3, that would be fine as well. Either one of those, but that is how I want it. I don't want a decimal, okay? So either one of those. Okay, let's move on to 7. So we need to minus our 1 first. We get -5 and negative. Okay, so this negative is causing us problems. So I'm going to write it a little bit differently. Having a negative out front is like saying I'm doing -1 times whatever that is. So if we have -1 times something, to get rid of it, we need to divide it, right? We end up with x minus 4 squared equals a +5. At this point, we are safe to square root both sides and get x minus 4 equals positive or negative square root of 5. And then our last step is to add that 4 over. So we get 4 plus or minus square root of 5. Again, that represents two answers because you have 4 plus square root of 5 or 4 minus square root of 5. Man, I'm just making mistakes all over the place. I just noticed that 6 divided by 3 should be a 2. So this would have been a 2 inside that radical. Okay, number 8, let's do our last one. So before we can square root, we have to get rid of the 2. Then we have x minus 2 squared equals 3/2. Okay, at this point we are okay to square root. And we get left with x minus 2 equals a positive or a negative square root of 3 over 2. And then our last step is to add our 2 over. So we'll get 2 plus or minus square root of 3/2. Okay, so that is all the practice problems. that we need to, that we are going to do today. The remainder of your time, you should get a 3.1 sheet from the sub now. Now you can work on summarizing your final notes with the person next to you. So fill in the blank, do this example, come up with a student example. So make one up that you will solve in this spot. And then you can write your things to remember. Just go over kind of what those rules were and how you can like write notes for yourself for later. Okay, after you do that, your last thing to do today is going to be to do these check your understanding problems. Once you do those check your understanding problems, you can turn that page in, and that will be the points for today. So go ahead, fill in those final notes, and do the check your understanding problems, and let me know later if you have any questions. Thanks.